this week's show, going to be a barn burner. We got Dr. Bruce Fife, author of The Palm Oil Miracle, as well as The Coconut Oil Miracle on the show today. Let me get to Dr. Fife's bio. Bruce Fife, ND, is an internationally recognized expert on the health and nutritional aspects of coconut and related products. Dr. Fife is the author of numerous books, including The Coconut Oil Miracle, The Palm Oil Miracle, Coconut Lover's Cookbook, and Eat Fat, Look Thin. He is the publisher of the Healthy Ways newsletter, and you guys can learn more about him at www.coconutresearchcenter.org. Dr. Fife, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks so much for coming on. You get so much love from my listeners about our first show. They love that coconut oil show. That's got about, 20,000 downloads? Like, a lot of people have heard that. I see it pop up on Twitter all the time. So thanks for a great show, and I know we're going to bring it this time too. How you doing today?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic. Me too. Hey, let's start the show off with just a little bit of review for our audience who missed our previous show. Would you mind telling us about your journey to becoming a naturopathic doctor as well as an expert on oils and a whole lot of other stuff?
Sure. I'm a certified nutritionist and naturopath, and when I went through school, we were taught that saturated fats promote heart disease. They're bad. Coconut oil, palm oil, the tropical oils were highly saturated. They were bad, so they promoted heart disease, and that's my frame of mind. This was about 14 years ago when I had a colleague tell me that coconut oil was one of the good fats and that it didn't cause heart disease, and it had many benefits with it. She shared with me some research that backed this up, and it really shocked me because it went against everything I had learned and anything that you see in the media. And so I started thinking about it, and I wanted to learn more. I actually wanted to verify, whether coconut oil was a good fat or a bad fat, and so I started doing some research. And I found that at the time, there wasn't anything written on coconut oil or palm oil, the health benefits or the dangers of it. What I could find was stuff on nutrition in general, and they always would put one little sentence saying that coconut oil or the tropical oils were saturated fats and they caused heart disease, and that's all they would say. And so I realized that none of these authors that were writing this stuff knew what they were talking about. So I had to go to the medical studies, and I looked up everything I could on coconut oil, and as I was researching this, I found benefit after benefit. And I found coconut oil was a marvelous natural substance with many benefits. I also learned that it had it actually promoted heart health. It was not bad for the heart, but it helped protect against it. And of course, in my studies, I also read a lot about palm and palm oil. And so I learned about that too. And so I learned that the tropical oils were actually very healthy oils. And this led me to write my first book on coconut oil called The Coconut Oil Miracle.
It's a great book. I've been going through it for the last few days. There's so much information there. I'll be honest, this is a very hard or difficult show to get ready for because I was like, what do I want to talk about? So later on in the show, I'm just going to throw out a topic and just let you talk about it because there's just so much stuff. I want you to expand on something that you wrote on page 19, if you don't mind. You say that many of the studies done in the 1960s and 1970s, which implicated saturated fat as a possible contributor to heart disease, were actually done using hydrogenated vegetable oils, not saturated fats. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah, back then, researchers didn't know that there was a difference between hydrogenated vegetable oils and saturated fat, because when you take a vegetable oil and you hydrogenate it, you're bombarding it with hydrogen. And what you are doing is you're taking a liquid vegetable oil and turning it into a solid fat. And so to them, there wasn't any difference between an artificial solid fat and saturated fat. So they started using hydrogenated vegetable oils as their source of saturated fat in these studies on heart disease. Well, lo and behold, they found that this so-called saturated fat promoted heart disease, and so saturated fats in general got a bad rap. It wasn't until years later that they realized that it was the trans fatty acids in the hydrogenated oils that was the bad thing. It wasn't the saturated fats, it was these artificial trans fatty acids.
Wow, that's one big whoops. You know what I mean? So tonight we're going to primarily talk about palm oil. Where does it come from?
It comes from the oil palm tree. Now, the oil palm tree originated, researchers think, in West Africa, and it gradually migrated to Southeast Asia, and then, traders and stuff brought it into South America, so it's kind of spread out throughout the tropics now.
Gotcha. And is it still, I read this in your book, is it still the most widely used oil in the world?
Yes, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that researchers and doctors have wised up and they've realized that hydrogenated oils, which usually is hydrogenated soybean oil, is very unhealthy. And so they needed to have something to replace the hydrogenated oils. Well, the only thing that could replace it was some type of saturated fat, because you needed a more solid fat for the cooking properties and for long life and the antioxidant properties. And so palm oil was a perfect fit. So as food manufacturers and restaurants have been trying to get away from the trans fatty acids, they've been adopting to a big extent the palm oil.
Gotcha. And it's also more eco-friendly, right, than soy and corn?
Oh, man, yes, extremely so. When you go to the palm areas, what they do is they'll plant a palm. They don't have to plow up acres and acres of land. They dig a hole and they put in the plant, and they allow it to grow. And the tree will produce for 25, 30 years. And so once you've planted it, you don't have to do anything else. You don't have to cultivate the ground. You don't have to fence it off or anything. So palm plantations basically look like rainforests. They're full of trees. They let the shrubbery come in and grow free. The animals can roam in and out freely, so there's no restrictions on that. And they usually don't use any fertilizers or sprays. And so it's very friendly that way. Now, you can compare that to, say, soy and corn. It would take 13 acres of soy to equal the same output as 1 acre of palm.
Wow.
You get the same yield. And so with the soy, you've got, you plow it every year. You plant it. You spray it. You put fertilizer. You have to put fences around it to keep the animals, because they don't want animals tramping all over it. And so it's very unfriendly. Corn is even worse. It takes 35 acres of corn to equal the output of 1 acre of palm.
Wow. That's crazy.
So when you look at this, you could see that palm oil is very eco-friendly.
Definitely sounds like it. Got a little static on my headphones. I hope that's not showing up, but we'll just keep on rolling through. Let's get into some nitty-gritty. We talked about, on our show with coconut oil, how easily the polyunsaturated fats, like the vegetable oils, are oxidized. One of the ways to further oxidize these oils is to cook with them. A lot of people use polyunsaturated fats to cook with, or these oils are used in the production of processed foods. Can you talk about something I found totally fascinating, the HNEs that are produced when common vegetable oils are heated, as well as what diseases they've been linked with?
Yeah, vegetable oils, the polyunsaturated vegetable oils are very delicate, and they oxidize very easily. And when they oxidize, they become rancid. Visually, you can think of iron. You have a bar of iron, and when iron oxidizes, it rusts. that's what happens with oils. When they oxidize, they degenerate. They become unhealthy. They promote disease such as heart disease, autoimmune diseases, cancer, and things like that because they are degenerated. Mm-hmm. And so all polyunsaturated oils are very delicate in that respect. When they're exposed to sunlight, to oxygen, or to heat, they start degenerating. And the problem is that in the factory, when they are producing or they extracting the oils from the seeds, whether it's corn or soybean or whatever, the oxidation process starts at that time. So they start going rancid in the factory when they're being produced. And so the oil is then bottled and shipped to all over the place and goes into the store, and then it sits on the store shelf. And all this time, it is continually oxidizing because it is still exposed to heat. Even room temperature will cause polyunsaturated oils to oxidize. Sunlight, light in the stores, will promote that as well. And so when you go to the store and buy any type of polyunsaturated oil, the normal type that people buy for cooking, corn oil, soybean oil, safflower oil, all those types, they are already been gone rancid to some extent before you even bring them home. And so when you bring them home, and then typically what happens is you put them in your frying pan and you cook with them. And that is absolutely the worst thing you can do because heat accelerates the oxidation and the formation of free radicals. And these free radicals, as I mentioned, are very unhealthy. And so you're eating a very unhealthy product when you cook anything with polyunsaturated vegetable oils.
Mm-hmm. And so that's where you get the production of these HNEs. And these HNEs, they can contribute to heart disease, right?
Exactly, yes.
But they're supposed to be the heart-healthy vegetable oils. Are there any other conditions that can be caused or contributed to by these HNEs?
Cancers, and they actually accelerate the aging of the body, so they will promote the wrinkling of the skin. The typical signs and symptoms that we relate to aging, they will promote that. They will accelerate that.
Oh, that's no fun. Don't want to age too fast. Palm oil. Let's get into it. So I first want to focus on vitamin E. And like I said earlier, I just want to just throw out a topic and just let you just go ahead and talk because there's so many different questions I can ask you about vitamin E. You write that it's the best predictor of heart attack risk. You write that the best predictor of heart attack risk is low blood levels of vitamin E. Can you tell us how vitamin E is so cardioprotective as well as what other benefits it has on our health?
Well, one of the main things that research has found associated with heart disease is oxidation. Oxidation of the oils in our bodies as well as our diet. And the way to prevent oxidation is with antioxidants. And vitamin E as well as vitamin A and some other nutrients are antioxidants. And so they block the formation of free radicals which are generated during the oxidation process. And it's these free radicals that, promote the premature aging of the body, that promote cancer, that promote heart disease. When you look at the arteries and you look at arteriosclerosis, you'll find that the plaque in arteries is all oxidized, and it's filled with oxidized fat. Interestingly enough, most of that fat is polyunsaturated vegetable oil fat.
It's so backwards.
Yes, it also has oxidized cholesterol. It doesn't have normal everyday cholesterol. It only has oxidized cholesterol. So, cholesterol can be damaged too. It can be oxidized. And so what you find in these arteries are damaged fats, mostly the polyunsaturated fats, but as well as some cholesterol. But this isn't normal cholesterol. So to protect against that would be antioxidants. Antioxidants will stop the free radical process, because when you have a molecule and it's attacked by a free radical, it in itself turns into a free radical. Free radicals are very highly reactive molecular entities that are very unstable, and so they try to stabilize themselves by stealing electrons from neighboring molecules. And when they steal a neighboring molecule, that molecule then becomes a free radical. And so it's a domino effect. When you have one free radical, it'll produce thousands of more free radicals until it's stopped. And it's stopped by an antioxidant. Mm-hmm. So these antioxidant nutrients in our bodies are there to protect us from oxidation or from the free radical formation. And so vitamin E is a very potent antioxidant. It works against fat-soluble molecules such as polyunsaturated fats. And so it's very important to help protect us from heart disease and even cancer and other health conditions.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. Is there a blood test we can get for that? I mean, would a vitamin E blood test be more reliable than, say, getting your cholesterol checked or your C-reactive protein?
Well, for the cholesterol, yes, and you can test the blood for various nutrients and things like that. And cholesterol itself really isn't that great of a predictor of heart disease, particularly total cholesterol. And so, using vitamin E would be better.
Right on. Let's stay with vitamin E for a second. Most of our audience has probably heard of the tocopherols, but what they may not have heard about are the tocotrienols or the tocotrienols, however you say that. According to your book, the latter are far superior to the tocopherols. Can you give us the highlights as to why?
Yes. People think that vitamin E, there's just one vitamin E, but there's actually a family of vitamin E's. And the tocopherols are the normal ones that we find in our foods. Alpha tocopherol is the primary vitamin E that we talk about when we're supposed to get our RDA of nutrients. It's the one that's listed on the boxes. It has so much of RDA of vitamin E. It's alpha tocopherol, so it's only one of these products. But there's actually 8 vitamin E's, alpha, beta, gamma, tocopherols. But then there's also, and these are the most common, there's also a less common form of vitamin E called tocotrienols. And these are the type that are in palm oil. Some other foods have smaller amounts. But palm oil is the richest dietary source of these special tocotrienols. Now, tocotrienols are special because they are 60 times more potent than ordinary vitamin E. So they have 60 times the antioxidant power of ordinary vitamin E. So they're super vitamin E, and so they have that much more protective capability than ordinary vitamin E. And so they've been shown in studies to be more effective, far more effective than normal ordinary vitamin E in protecting against multiple health problems.
They protect against cancer, correct?
They are wonderful against cancer. Studies have shown that normal, ordinary vitamin E only has a modest effect against cancer, but the tocotrienols have a very pronounced effect on cancer. They protect the DNA of the cells from free radicals that can promote cancer. Another very important thing about the tocotrienols is that they help kill cancer. Cancers are cells that multiply rapidly, and normally our cells, they grow, they multiply to a certain extent, and then at some period of time they die. All of our cells are programmed to die at a certain time. That way new cells can come and replace them, and go on. But with cancer, what happens is this mechanism of self-dying has been interfered with so that cancer cells do not die. They continually reproduce and reproduce and reproduce without ever dying, and so they get bigger and bigger, and that's the problem with cancer. Now, the tocotrienols, what they do is they reactivate the enzymes in the cancerous cells that cause apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. And so they are reactivating the original programmed cell death of the cancer cells, causing the cancer to actually die.
Very, very, very cool. I hope by the end of this show, everybody who's listening to it goes out and buys some palm oil, just like they do. A lot of more people use coconut oil now since they listened to our last show. Seriously, we did some good for the coconut oil industry for sure. Hey, one more thing with the tocotrienols that I want to bring up. What about their effects on the immune system?
They help the immune system. They help boost the immune system. They help it so their immune system is more effective. In fact, we haven't talked about this yet, but the thing about palm oil, the thing that makes palm oil so wonderful, the thing that makes palm oil different from every other oil out there, the thing that makes palm oil different from coconut oil even, is that palm oil is saturated with all types of wonderful vitamins, particularly antioxidant vitamins and nutrients, such as beta-carotene, vitamin E, the tocotrienol vitamin E, alpha-carotene, vitamin K, CoQ10. I mean, it's loaded with all these wonderful vitamins. And our bodies, our immune system depends on a lot of these nutrients in order to function optimally. And palm oil provides the immune system with these nutrients so that our white blood cells work at peak capacity.
I love it. Hey, about a year ago, I think it was, they had that nuclear reactor thing in Japan. And, everybody wanted to get their hands on some iodine and whatnot. I read in your book about, is it Squalene, and how it can protect us from radiation. Can you tell us about that? And on top of that, whenever you want to get to it, can you tell us how it's a natural detoxifier as well?
Okay. One of the nutrients that's in the red palm oil is squalene. Mm-hmm. And it has, originally it was discovered in shark liver oil. And it was found to have very potent anti-cancer properties, and so shark liver oil became a very popular natural anti-cancer remedy. But a plant source of the same thing is from palm oil. And one of the interesting things about squalene is that it blocks the detrimental effects of radiation. This could be UV radiation, it could be X-ray radiation, it could be nuclear radiation. It blocks the effects. Interesting study some researchers did with mice, in that they took these mice, and I think they were like 50, and they divided into two groups of 50, and they gave one group palm oil in their diet prior to this test. And so when the test came, they exposed them to radiation, and the radiation killed most of those mice that did not have the palm oil. But with those that received the palm oil, there was a 100% survival rate.
That is amazing.
So it demonstrated that the protective aspects of squalene against radiation. And so if you have a problem with being exposed, or if you're going to go to see the doctor and get x-rays, or the dentist, a good thing to do, a good protective thing for yourself, is to make sure that several days before that you start incorporating palm oil into your diet.
I love it. I'm so glad I asked you that question. That was a great answer. How about poisons and chemicals and pharmaceutical drugs? Can it help us to detoxify?
Yes, it can. It's interesting that these substances in the palm oil can actually detoxify some of these environmental and industrial toxins that we come in contact to all the time. And again, research has shown that animals exposed to certain chemicals are essentially immune to them if they've been fed palm oil.
Interesting. You actually mentioned CoQ10 a little bit earlier. We've been told, of course, that palm oil is really bad for our hearts, but one of the nutrients is CoQ10. How important is CoQ10 to heart function?
CoQ10 is extremely important to heart function. In fact, the highest concentration of CoQ10 in our bodies is in the heart because the heart relies on it so heavily. And CoQ10 is essential for energy production. And the heart functions much better when it has CoQ10 available. So the heart is healthier with CoQ10, and the red palm oil actually provides a natural source of this very important nutrient.
And so, go ahead. I'm sorry.
One thing we didn't talk about, but I've been kind of mentioning here and there, is the red palm oil. And maybe some of your listeners may not realize what red palm oil is.
Go ahead.
And so basically, red palm oil is virgin palm oil. When producers make the palm oil, they'll take the palm fruit, and the fruit itself is a reddish-orange color. And when they extract the oil is a deep reddish orange, and that color comes from all the carotenes that are in the oil, the beta-carotene, the alpha-carotene, the gamma-carotene, the lycopene, and lutein, and all these other carotenoids give it this rich color, and so it's called red palm oil. Now, you can process the oil. There's RBD oil, refined, bleached, and deodorized palm oil, which is normally used in most of the commercial foods. And during processing, they use heat, of course, and so a lot of the carotenes will be destroyed during the processing, the heat processing. And so it loses the reddish color. And so afterwards, it actually looks like a pale yellow color. And so even though most of the beta-carotene and such has been reduced, the vitamin E content is still fairly high. It still retains about 70% of the vitamin E content. And since palm oil is the richest dietary source of vitamin E, it still is a good, healthy source of vitamin E, as well as CoQ10 and various other nutrients.
I'm glad you brought that up. I actually skipped that question by accident. Good call. Really good call. You started off the book talking about vitamin A deficiency and night blindness, which seems to be a big problem in certain parts of the world. Is palm oil an effective therapy for these problems as related to vitamin A deficiency?
Now, that's a very good question. You know, throughout the world, vitamin A deficiency is a major problem, and millions of children suffer from vitamin A deficiency. And vitamin A you get from eggs and meat. And in a lot of these areas, people don't have that much access to meat products, and so they suffer from a vitamin A deficiency. And vitamin A deficiency can cause night blindness. It can cause total blindness as well if it progresses far enough. It also stunts growth. It depresses the immune system, so the person is more likely to become sick, have multiple episodes of illness. And now beta-carotene can be converted in the body to vitamin A. In fact, you only get vitamin A from animal products. And beta-carotene is what you get from plants, and the body will convert the beta-carotene to vitamin A. In fact, that's how the animals get their vitamin A. For example, a cow, gets its vitamin A by eating grass, which is rich in beta-carotene, and then producing the vitamin A in its body. And then when we eat the cow, then we get our vitamin A that way. So in the countries where they have the vitamin A deficiency, what they've done is they've used red palm oil to treat this, and they will go into these areas and they will give the children either products. Well, basically what they do is like make a biscuit, and they'll make it using red palm oil. They will give that to them, and the beta-carotene in the biscuits in the red palm oil will be converted to vitamin A, and this will basically reverse their vitamin A deficiency. And places in Southeast Asia and South America, several governments have done programs where they've gone into areas where they have a really serious problem with vitamin A deficiency and have instituted these programs and have been very successful in reversing vitamin A deficiency. Now, in a lot of these places, they do have plants that are rich in beta-carotene, but it doesn't do any good. They can eat these sweet potatoes and other fruits and vegetables that have a lot of beta-carotene, but it's not being converted into vitamin A. And the reason being is that you have to have fat in your diet in order to convert beta-carotene into vitamin A. Well, palm oil is a fat. It supplies its own beta-carotene, so it is very easily converted into vitamin A. And so these children who don't eat fat because they don't have access to animal products, their fat consumption is very low, and even though they have normal beta-carotene consumption, they don't get the benefit of it because they don't have enough fat. And so incorporating the palm oil in these areas has done wonders for people's health.
Awesome. I'm sure there's at least one smoker or two in my audience who is going, beta-carotene has been shown to be harmful for smokers. What was wrong with that study that was so highly publicized a few years back?
You know, that's a good point, because when that came out, people were shocked because they would hear that antioxidants were good at protecting against cancer. And beta-carotene is one of these antioxidants that previous studies had shown could protect against cancer, including lung cancer. But then this one study showed that beta-carotene actually increased cancer rates in smokers. And so this drew a lot of question, and a lot of doctors started saying, well, we're not going to recommend beta-carotene. But there was a problem with the study. What the study used was pure synthetic beta-carotene. And what gives the beta-carotene its antioxidant properties is its synergistic effect with other carotenes. So when you eat a natural source of beta-carotene, like red palm oil, you also get alpha-carotene, gamma-carotene, delta-carotene, lycopene. And these all work together synergistically to combat cancer. And so in studies that showed positive results, they actually used a natural source of carotene rather than the synthetic purified beta-carotene.
Don't want to do the synthetic. Hey, if anybody out there wants to call in, 347-237-5608. If you have questions, 347-237-5608. I've got a Twitter question from B. Shine. He says, what's the difference between palm kernel oil, palm fruit oil, and palm oil? Which one do you think is best?
That's an excellent question, and that's one that can be very confusing for people. There's actually two types of oil that come from the oil palm, and that is the palm oil and the palm kernel oil. Sometimes you'll hear people talk about palm fruit oil, but that's the same as the palm oil. The palm fruit is about the size of a small apricot. And the outside is the fleshy part, is the fruit part, and that when you take that, you crush it, and you get the palm oil or the red palm oil or the palm fruit oil, which is all the same. Inside the fleshy part is the seed or the kernel, and you crack that open, and it has the kernel inside. And if you extract the oil from the kernel, you get palm kernel oil. Palm kernel oil is very, very different from palm oil or red palm oil. The red palm oil, of course, is rich in all these carotene, so it's a deep red color unless it's been processed. The palm kernel oil, on the other hand, is totally clear, totally white. It's very much like coconut oil. In fact, even the chemistry of palm kernel oil is very, very similar to coconut oil. It's got the medium-chain fatty acids in it. So all the health benefits that are associated with coconut oil can be obtained through palm kernel oil as well.
Good stuff. Another Twitter question from my buddy Bobby, moving for wellness. He asks, are there toxic forms of palm oil out there? I'm a little skeptical since the food industry is now using more palm oil than soy.
You know, palm oil has so many health benefits to it. Even the refined, bleached, and deodorized, or what I call the white palm oil, is far healthier than probably any other oil besides coconut oil you can find in the market. It's far superior to soybean oil, canola oil, or any of these other type of cooking oils. Even though it's been refined and it's lost some of its vitamin content, it still is a good source of vitamin E, still has a lot of other vitamins in it. So there really isn't a bad palm oil unless it has been hydrogenated.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for asking Bobby that question on Twitter. Let's chat about a few common myths before I let you go. Palm oil raises cholesterol. What's your take?
Well, research has shown that palm oil actually does not raise cholesterol. You know, people think, okay, palm oil is 50% saturated fat, 40% monounsaturated fat, and only 10% polyunsaturated fat. And because it has 50% saturated fat, people just automatically think, oh, it's going to raise cholesterol levels. Well, research has shown that it's pretty neutral. It doesn't raise cholesterol levels. It kind of keeps them pretty much the same level. Now, what it does actually is that it increases the production of HDL, the good cholesterol, and reduces slightly the LDL, or the bad cholesterol, and they kind of cancel out each other so that the total cholesterol remains the same, but cholesterol in general has improved because you have more good cholesterol as opposed to bad cholesterol.
Gotcha. Now, someone may see the composition of palm oil and see that there's a lot of palmitic acid in there, which typically increases cholesterol, if I'm correct. Now, you say that it won't increase cholesterol unless your diet is low in linoleic acid or your diet is very high in cholesterol. Can you comment on that a little bit?
Sure. People doing the research on this, they found that, they've examined all the different types of saturated fats. There's different types of saturated fats. You've got palmitic acid, stearic acid, and those things like that. And they've found out of the 8 or so common saturated fats in our diet, there's only a few of them that actually raise cholesterol, and palmitic acid is one of that. Now, palm oil contains a fair amount of palmitic acid. About 40% of the saturated 40% of it is from palmitic acid. Mm-hmm. And palmitic acid has been shown to increase total cholesterol. However, when they do these studies, they'll feed these animals pure palmitic acid, and so cholesterol goes up. But when they actually add in 5% linoleic acid, there is no effect. Now, natural palm oil has 10% of this linoleic acid, so it will not affect total cholesterol.
Gotcha. Last call for phone calls, 347-237-5608. We've got a quiet bunch today. Is there any proof that palm oil causes heart disease?
They've been studying saturated fats and different oils, including palm oil, for about 60 years. And researchers have been trying to demonstrate that saturated fats actually cause heart disease. But in all this time, they've failed. In fact, interestingly enough, last year there was a study that was published that took all the studies that had ever been done on saturated fat consumption and heart disease, and they combined them into one mega study. This is going to be the definitive study of all studies regarding saturated fat and heart disease. And what the researchers found was there was no relationship between saturated fat consumption and heart disease. Those people who ate the most saturated fat had no more heart disease than those people who ate no saturated fat. So those people who would eat bacon and eggs, 3 times a day, had no more rate of heart disease than vegetarians.
That's awesome, because that's pretty much what I eat every day, bacon and eggs. Let's go to the phone lines. We got a caller from the 480. What's your name? Where are you calling from?
What's up? It's Dante. Just had a couple questions for you.
Dante Rios from Arizona. Thanks for calling in. What's your questions for Dr. Fife?
Well, I kind of wanted to ask a couple of different ones. The first, kind of going back to vitamin E now. I've heard that, like, with vitamin E oil, it's good for putting on, like, small cuts or whatever, and just really helps sort of bring the skin back. Now, do you think that palm oil, in terms of maybe, like, using a mask or using it for that reason, say, for instance, if you don't want to, look like a junkie when you, like, donate blood or whatnot, and would that be effective?
Yes, extremely so, since the palm oil has the tocotrienols, which are a much more effective, much more potent form of vitamin E. It will help speed the healing of wounds and cuts. It will help reduce scarring and get rid of scarring. If you put it on a cut, it will help reduce the chance that scars will form. Palm kernel oil palm oil is a great conditioner for the skin. It makes the skin nice and soft and smooth, and that's because it is so rich in all these different antioxidants. It protects the skin. It protects the skin from UV radiation. It protects the skin from X-ray radiation. And so it's very healing. It's very protective. You can even use it as a sunblock. In fact, it has an SPF of about 15 technically, but it's actually even more effective than that because of the rich content of antioxidants in it.
Awesome. Now, just another quick one I wanted to ask is I do massage therapy, and I've just mainly switched over to using coconut oil with my clients because I really don't know what's in most lotions, even like the healthy ones. But in terms of like both use and all absorbing all the nutrients from like coconut oil, how exactly does that work, and how effective is it? Like, say if you're, giving obviously more than a teaspoon in like one massage or something.
Well, coconut oil is fantastic on the skin. It's great for healing cuts again. It's great for sunblock. It's great in getting rid of moles and warts and all things like that. And red palm oil, too, has some of that ability. But the drawback with the red palm oil is that it's red. And so when you put it on the skin, it will stain it reddish orange, and so you've got this coloration on you until you wash it off with soap and water.
Oh,
so you can use it.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, you can use it, and it is good for the skin, but you need to keep in mind that it's going to look a little unsightly until you wash it.
Oh, okay. And in terms of how you absorb the oil through the skin as opposed to through the mouth, I think that's more kind of what I was gearing towards.
Well, the coconut oil,
the
coconut oil will absorb better because it's composed primarily of the medium-chain fatty acids, and these small fatty acids easily absorb through the skin. Now, palm oil does not have any medium-chain fatty acids, so it's different from coconut oil in that aspect. So it doesn't absorb in the skin through the skin as easy as coconut oil does.
Okay.
For example, if you used it in massage, the person would have the oil all over their skin even after the massage, as opposed to coconut oil, it will be absorbed into the skin.
Oh, okay.
Got it. Yeah. Dante, thanks for calling in, Dante.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Talk to you soon. All righty, good questions from Dante there, my main man. Oh, we got some Twitter questions coming in. Hey, you actually mentioned this in your book, and it's a question from Tori Spinoso, at Tori Spinoso on Twitter. She wanted you to talk about sustainable palm oil, and I asked her if she wanted to know anything specific, and she said at the cost of the Indonesian forest and wildlife, she loves coconut oil but can't support palm oil. I think you wrote about that in your book. What are your thoughts?
Yes, I did. You know, years and years ago, it was probably true where people went into these rainforests and indiscriminately started chopping down trees and then coming through and then replanting them with palm trees. And in so doing, habitats were endangered, but that doesn't happen anymore. And that was in Indonesia. There are now laws in place, and they've been in place for a while, that prevent that type of thing. Malaysia is the biggest palm oil producer in the world, and for the last 20 years, all of the palm plantations in Malaysia have been put into agricultural farms that used to be coconut farm plantations or some type of crops. So they haven't cut down any forests in the last 20 years to put in palm plantations. They've already been in cultured plant places. And basically, in these other countries, including Indonesia, they have realized this too, and so they have laws that prevent going into areas where there are endangered species and indiscriminately cutting down trees and replanting them with palm plantations. This doesn't mean that some people don't go illegally to go cut down trees, but it does mean that palm plantations aren't being put up where they shouldn't be put up. Plus, palm oil comes from lots of different places. It comes from West Africa. It comes from South America, where this problem doesn't exist.
Gotcha. So, great question.
As we've mentioned earlier, 1 acre of palm is equal to 35 acres of corn. So which one destroys the environment more? And corn requires all the pesticides and fertilizers and the plowing every year, where the palm, you plant it once, and for 30 years it's there and allows animals to go in free and easy without the pesticides and stuff. Palm oil is very eco-friendly.
Mm-hmm. Good question from Tori. Justine had the same question as well, so thanks for submitting those. One last question for you, and it's a question I have, but also Leah, who's on Twitter, at NaturalUCoach. She says, hi, guys. How do you recommend taking palm oil? I cook with red palm oil. Would this retain the nutrients, or should I use it cold?
No, I actually recommend that you use palm oil for cooking. Palm oil is excellent for cooking. It has a smoke point of 437 degrees. So you can actually cook it to a higher temperature than coconut oil. And that's why it's commonly used in a lot of processed foods, because it's high smoke point and it's very stable under heat, and so it doesn't lose its health aspects. And when you use red palm oil in cooking, you're never going to cook it long and hot enough to destroy any appreciable amount of the carotenes or vitamin E in it. And you can tell how much of the beta-carotene is lost by the color, because when the beta-carotene is lost, it starts turning white. But usually when you cook with it, it still retains its nice, rich red color. I love to cook with red palm oil. It gives a flavor. Coconut oil is pretty mild in its flavor, but palm oil has a unique flavor, and this flavor in many ethnic dishes is used just for the palm oil flavor. And when you mix it with or cook stir fry, when you cook meats and stuff, it gives these foods a wonderful flavor. I love to cook my eggs, in palm oil. It gives them a great flavor.
I'm going to have to try that one for sure. That sounds really cool and different. Dr. Fife, another wonderful show. You've done a great job just breaking it down to us. I appreciate your time. You have another book on Alzheimer's, right?
Yes, just came out this year.
Sweet. Well, we'll have you back on in a couple months to talk about that one. We're going to highlight all of the Dr. Bruce Fife books on Underground Wellness Show for sure. You have a great night. Again, thank you so much, and we really appreciate what you do. You have a great night.
Thank you for inviting me.
Not a problem. Bye-bye.